Hey guys, what's up? How are you? Welcome back. Today, let's talk about the new era of Sega. And kind of like some of the last games they released, we'll talk about it. And what are my thoughts and what do I think really is going on? And how do I think this will play out, and why all of a sudden it was announced out of nowhere, right? Because as we know, Sega hasn't had a lot of success in a lot of recent years. And it's mainly due to them not having enough financial backing to do certain things. But as of recent, they made this announcement, which was out of nowhere, big surprise, in the Video Game Awards that Jeff Keighley hosts, right? And it was one of the highlights of the show and one of the pleasant surprise, right? Especially for myself being a big Sega fan since the very beginning. On the Sega Master System, later on discovering the Sega 1000, and pretty much discovering Sega in the arcades in Green Acorn, in here in the New Jersey Passaic area, that was run by a gentleman named Tom, which I don't even know if he's alive or not anymore. May God bless him wherever he may be. Playing games like Quartet, and playing games the original Hang On and Outrun, Afterburner, and anything that was around that horizon in that moment, like, Global Defense, SOS, and even Zaxxon, right? Because he had Zaxxon and Congo Bongo as well, which were games from Sega that we played in the Atari era that were also in the arcades. For those of you that may or may not know. And I want to say that I've been saying for a very long time, I've been on record saying that multiple times during podcasts, when we did them together, when we have done them together with all of my brothers through the years, right? That one of the ways that Sega can give back to their roots and their glory days is if they have the right, the right purse behind them to back them up, the right support system, and the right leadership. And as of recent, they just announced that one of the people that are in charge or taking charge is one of the guys that was involved during the Dreamcast era with the late great, with the great Peter Moore, right? And we all know that Peter Moore and people like Bernie Stollards and Tom Kalinske were very successful during the era of Sega of America in the stateside with success for Sega from the Genesis going forward, and all the missteps and shortcomings due to basically a lot of factors. One being, Sega of Japan sabotaging themselves, and also Sony coming in, trying to bully their way in by trying to make deals with Sega and then not taking the offer because Sony was not known for the video game space. They were not savvy within that realm. Just like they went to Nintendo tried to, do some deals with them, and then they tried to shorthand Nintendo. Nintendo caught on, and it was like, no, wait, you're not doing that. Cut their throats behind their backs right before a showing and an announcement with Philips CDI, and because it was for good reason, because Nintendo was taking the cost of everything from them helping them create a new CD-based console to providing the CDs that they were going to have for their games, and then, ultimately Sony was going to get the bigger percentage of the purse, even though Nintendo was fitting the bill. So again, a lot of little different things like that kind of helped put Sega in an up and down slope through the years as they went on, even though they had massive success with the Genesis and massive success with something like Dreamcast. And then Sony also came in when they saw that to fearmonger developers, talking about that the console's hardware didn't have longevity, for them to consider or reconsider, if you will, putting games on it long term and going with their PlayStation 2 architecture that was yet still not released. It was only on paper. And a lot of developers fell for it, and also because of the cash that they were offering. They had a big purse, they were offering big money, and developers were not seeing that type of money in this space before, because nobody had that kind of money. Sony had that money because it was an entertainment business that did movies, electronics. They were a multi-billion-dollar company back then, and as we all know, that they had the pockets, so they basically mustling their way in, buying and paying people off, convincing them to make these third-party games all exclusive, and they would pay them big-time royalties, I guess, or percentages as time went on. So a lot of developers jumped ship, and did it. Because Nintendo couldn't fit the bill, neither could Sega. Even though they were the pioneers alongside Atari, and Sony, instead of helping them so that they can continue going forward, doing it the right way, respecting the legacy, no, they didn't do that. They just said, screw you, we're going to stab you in the back, we're not helping you, sayonara, you got to go full-blown software company, and we really don't care. So that's why I have no real sympathy for them. But this new announcement with this new era is something that is, I guess, been in the works for a while. And quite presently a great, nice surprise, like I said. But I do want to stress out that we may need to recognize and keep it 100, that the reason why this era is happening, and I'm not saying that there's still some businesses that haven't been maybe have not been announced behind closed doors yet, like the possibility of Sega being bought and acquired by Xbox, due to the comments that they've been saying as of late, saying that only Sega has shown true respect and value for their IPs, or that, they're very happy with the success of Game Pass, putting their games there, because series like Yakuza have never made that much money in the past on PlayStation's platform the way they have on Game Pass as of recent. Even though, quote-unquote, Game Pass is just to play free content, or what they consider quote-unquote free because it's a lot for a certain price, and that people won't buy the games. Which, the reality is that people buy games, and they buy more games because of Game Pass, because Sarah Bonds, Phil Spencer, and I've clearly talked about this in the past, but it also depends on the games that they may be. If you have, games that are appealing, that are massive success or fun, or popular even, they're going to attract the audience. People are going to play it, and they're going to purchase it, right? Such as something like Starfield, right? For example, because it's most recent. But that's just a scenario, right? And so, my whole thing is that people are trying to act as this is just coming from Sega themselves, Granted, they did have success with the two Sonic movies that they made a deal with, but those were, I believe, funded by actual Paramount, but they split royalties with them, obviously, and the profits. And I think that was part of the helping Sega as well, being able to start making games internally and bringing them up to date, like a lot of the old IPs, for the new generation. You know, keeping the same flair and same style and aesthetic, in some cases, true to the nature of the IPs. The same way I truly believe that most of their, profits that they're getting now, that's allowing this to do, is for two big reasons. One, they leased out their licenses to a bunch of other companies. For example, the Streets of Rage is done by, I think it was Lizard Cube, and they do Timo and some other stuff, some other publishers and developers. They leased out the Panzer Dragoon 1, and that was made. They leased out the House of the Dead 1, that was remade. They've leased out Alex Kidd that you see here, which is a remake of the original Alex Kidd, which was also a couple other publishers. Also, keeping in mind that they had leased out all the Wonder Boys, from Dragon's Trap to Wonder Boy 4, Monster World, a bunch of them. Even the first one in the arcade, which was Wonder Boy Returns, which never saw the light of day on Xbox for whatever reason, but it is on Switch and it is on PlayStation 4 and 5. So, them doing this has obviously garnered them revenue. But I think the main meats and potatoes and why they've garnered excuse me, enough revenue, if you notice, is due to the fact that they keep doing deals with Xbox with Game Pass. Because every time that they renew the monthly deals to keep them there, if they did, let's say they did a deal for 4 months, 6 months, once it expires, they renew it again, and most of those games stay there. Like when they had the new Phantasy Star game that had came out years ago on PC, and it was now on Xbox only. I think it was called Genesis, and it was only on Xbox for like 3-4 years, and now it finally just went to PlayStation, right? Plus the little deals that they do here and there, because Virtual Fighter 5, the online remake version, is only on PlayStation. They still haven't brought it to Xbox. Same way they have a deal with the Fist of the North Star, which they made a new one, and I believe it was the same developers that did 1 and 2 that were on 360, that Sega also published for them, and they have not brought the game to Xbox either. Even though it is a Sega published game. And even though they keep saying that they've had a great relationship with Microsoft and they're very happy. But I truly believe that, it's the Game Pass money that they're getting, because they keep on getting paid monthly. As you saw when those charts were revealed of how much they would have to pay for certain set games, you saw that something like, let's say, Star Wars, the Jedi Fallen Order, if they did it monthly or for the year, I believe they were paying out almost $300 million just to keep that game on Game Pass, or around those numbers, which is the cost of a big AAA title. And people say that they don't invest, on Game Pass with real quality games. you saw that GTA 5, that remastered version that's been around for since the 360 era is in around almost 20 years, and they were paying them, Rockstar, monthly, almost $10 million or $10 million to be exact, every month, which sounds ludicrous. How can you say a company doesn't invest on Game Pass, paying those type of numbers, but yet they're willing to pay those numbers for all types of games, whether they're new or old, to have it on Game Pass? You see, it just doesn't make no sense. So I can imagine that they probably paid Sega a nice amount of money to retain things like all of the Yakuza series, which I believe they're still all on Game Pass. If I'm wrong, please correct me down in the comments, but I believe they're still there. And that's not including all other stuff that they quite possibly can bring out. Other games that they could quite possibly bring out that may or may not count, right? Give me a second, guys. Okay, guys, sorry. And I like other games that may or may not be on Game Pass. Like, I don't know which ones are really there, other than the Yakuza series, but they might have a Sonic one, I don't know, or some other stuff they might have published. I'm not really sure. I never really checked. But the point is that I feel like Sega has been doing a lot of good profits and business with Sega, with Microsoft, and this has helped them tremendously. Just like they said that they had a big deal or a big project in the works with Xbox for an ultimate game. Now, can an ultimate game mean that maybe it was a bunch of games, and that's why some of the games look really high quality? Because in the trailer, I know they first showed, the Jet Set Radio, the new one. And you see this is the 2-pack with Sega GT, Jet Set Radio for OG. When they showed that Jet Set Radio, the first thing I got from the trailer and the vibes I got is that the game looks to be maybe a story driven, but also with online components where you can play with other players, or up to 4 or 5 or maybe 6 or 7 or 8 players in the world of Jet Set, the city of Jet Set, right? Having the original DJ and everything. It looked really beautiful. It looks like it was high on density of people, but still keeping true to the nature of the first 2 games that originally came out, which was one on the Dreamcast first, which was Jet Set Radio, and the one on Xbox, again, Jet Set Radio Future, which is, considered JSRF, which is Jet Set Radio Future. And it still looks like it's not a low budget game, maybe a AA. So, it looks really impressive. Obviously, it's still early in the stages, but very exciting to see what it comes out to be as the end product nears to release. Then I believe after that they showed, I think it was the Shinobi. But the Shinobi's going back to the roots. The last big Shinobi game they had that was out was only on PlayStation as an exclusive, which was this in 3D, kind of like in the essence style of Ninja Gaiden and Ninja Blade, but not as robust, right? And this was a nice game, but simplified, a little bit different for the actual series as we know and we're used to. I do have the game, had it for a long time, and that was kind of like the one that looks the most polished or finished, and it looked to have the same graphics style as the way that Streets of Rage did, but keeping in mind that there was also a sequel to that Shinobi, which was none other than Nightshade. And I have that one as well from Sega. And this one was the sequel to that one in 3D. But this time around, the main protagonist character, or Shinobi, was a female version, which had a little bit more better freedom with moves, and the way the levels looked, it looked a little bit more bigger in scale when you played the second one, which was really cool. Still looked very nice graphically for the time that it came out. And it had really good music as well, that Shinobi style music. But there was also a release of that 2D style on the 3DS, and this was the Shinobi that came out, simply titled Shinobi, with the same look as he does have, as you see there. As you can see there, he has the white with the red. He has the same look as he does in the new one. And I have a feeling that it might be a sequel to this one. Because of the fact that his outfit looks very similar. And it's the same color palette as the one from the 3DS. Now, also keeping in mind, remembering, guys, that there was also the version for the Sega Genesis, which was part 3, where he also had that same suit in white with the red scarf and the red highlights, boots, gloves, and his belt, etc., and his head bandana. So that one looked like the most polished and staying true to the beginning essence and roots of Shinobi in the 2D, side-scrolling, but with that nice animation with some 3D effects, which also looked really, really nice. The third one they showed was none other than a brand new Streets of Rage. But this time, since Streets of Rage 4 came out, it was a phenomenal release. Phenomenal beat 'em up. A fantastic game. I'm glad that we got a physical copy on Xbox. We bought it way back when. But this one, as we know it, was in actual 2D as well, with that nice anime style animation, artwork and drawing, and it looks really, really fantastic. And it was really, really wonderful gameplay, online co-op with 2 players, and local 4-player co-op, which brought Streets of Rage back from kind of a hiatus, or I don't want to say the dead from the dead, because it would never die, because people still to this day talk about the greatness of Streets of Rage 2 and even Streets of Rage 3, which has a big, robust, and I think it's just as good as 2, but because 2 came out first and hit those so many high notes that people couldn't accept that 3 was just slightly different and not as much, so they expect like a big jump from Streets of Rage 1 to 2 and versus 2 to 3, which really wasn't, and that's why I never really got praised as much. And probably the fact that the levels were a little bit more lackluster, the game was a little shorter, but it did play hell better than the second one, because they added really cool elements like rolling. The speed was way faster, better collision detection, little tweaks and stuff here there that made the game feel much, much better and responsive. Even though the character selection wasn't as good as the second game, but a lot of people stood with that in mind, and I don't think kind of give it a fair chance. But if you get a chance, play it. It's on some of the collections. You can play it via emulation, online, all types of stuff. Streets of Rage 3 is very underrated, but really, really good. Even the music, maybe not as good as the first game, but definitely on par with the second game. I think still part 1 has the best soundtrack of all time for beat 'em ups. Anyway, then after that they showed a phenomenal looking Golden Axe, and this was the last Golden Axe that ever was made. And this Golden Axe, Beast Rider, is actually a really underrated game, underappreciated. People said, oh, it's horrible, it's this, it's that. And it really isn't. It's actually a decent game. It actually was one of the first games that started that color combat system where if you pick and some of the enemies did certain things, a certain color would pop out, and that would let you know what type of moves you would have to dedicate to that character. Whether you had to evade, block, right? Whether you had to use your sword, your magic, or just straight brutality, pick them up, things like that. Plus, the segments where you were able to get animals to help you, your steed, and ride on them, they were really fluid and responsive and played very well. And I like the dark undertones of the levels because they felt big, but they had a very dark undertone feel. Like the colors were very kind of monochromatic. I forgot monochronic. I forgot it for them, but they were very pastel. It felt more Conan the Barbarian-ish, so it gave it a realistic feel as opposed to just an arcadey feel, if that makes any sense. And they had Gimli, Gilius, and Axel in the story, and I remember they were talking about it during the era it came out, where I believe Sega was saying at the time that the plan was to start it off with that game, to go into a sequel where you actually had all the three characters and were trying to play it in co-op mode, which I think might be the ideas that they had for the sequel that was built into the new game they just showed, because it shows that it's all three of them co-op, and it's the original colors, original style, aesthetic in 3D, and looks to be the most high budget one or high budget game out of all the ones they showed in that sizzle reel. This is the new era. And that's the one that I'm most excited about because I love Golden Axe, always have. And to see a proper, bigger budget in this generation with the technology from now, it should be phenomenal. But again, it just goes back to the question, how are they funding these games? That's why I highly believe it's them getting good money from Microsoft, from Game Pass, or a possibility of them having partnered with Sega, Microsoft meaning, to do a plethora of games with different developers, and they fit the bill, and then they split the cost in order for Sega to, have a better opportunity and chance to make these games not only look next, that they fit for this generation, but that they actually have quality. Because it makes no sense for them to make games that have the iconic IPs and then they look good, but then when you play them, they don't feel quality. If that makes sense. And I've been saying this. They have to hit it out of the park with the quality, because if they don't, this whole investment of bringing things back would be and will be for nothing. They have to have quality. And Sega has never really left. As a matter of fact, last generation to this one, even from the 360, I think they made some of the best games that really more people didn't talk about and should. Because they were making unique IPs and good IPs, right? And good games, right? With clever ideas and unique ideas. To give you an example, last generation, they started off with Platinum Games partnering up, doing things like Bayonetta, right? Which they own that IP of the character. Doing things like Vanquish, right? They did things with Nintendo Switch like Mad World, right? And other great games like smaller titles like Hell Yeah and The Cave. And what was the other one that they did just recently, like in the beginning of the 2013 release of the Xbox One and PS4? with Toomba the Badass Elephant. And they did Condemn 1 and 2, which were fantastic games in a realm that they never did before. The last generation, well, during the 360 generation. They just had, Binary Domain, probably one of the greatest IPs they've done in a long time, that deserves and is criminally underrated and deserves a sequel and doesn't have one. Right? During the OG that did Otage 1 and 2, Gun Valkyrie. Sega has not skipped a beat as far as doing unique and good games. They just have not been paid attention to, because since it's not games that they were able to advertise, very well, because it costs money or because companies didn't push, it seemed as if maybe they didn't have the quality that people would expect, or that people just don't realize it's a game that was made by Sega, right? And again, like I said, I've been collecting their games since the PS1, 2, Dreamcast. Like Blood Will Tell. I even had the imported Altered Beast, which wasn't that bad, but it wasn't that great either. But you guys know what I mean. The Astro Boy on the DS, and the Astro Boy on the PS2. Outrun Coast to Coast, magnificent arcade racer, probably the best of the best. So many, like I said, House of the Dead 3. They had House of the Dead 4, but it's still stuck on PS3 and never came out to multiple platforms the way that House of the Dead 3 did, which is still kind of crazy. It's the Scarlet Nexus one that they have, which is in the arcade, which is House of the Dead 5. Criminally underrated, still hasn't come out in the home consoles, which it should, because it's a fantastic game. But you can find it at most Dave & Buster's. So again, like I said, they've been around. They never left. It's just a lot of people haven't been paying attention, but I always have. And then the last game they showed that sizzle reel, finally, but surely not least, was a new Crazy Taxi, which the last one was Crazy Taxi 3. Only on Xbox. It was exclusive. Alongside games, like I said, like Gun Valkyrie, Otage 1 and 2. And Crazy Taxi 3, though it looks early, it looks really, really good. It looks like it's going to be also online. You're going to have police chasing you. It showed multiple taxis driving at once, escaping the cops, like a game of tag, and or Duck Duck Goose, whatever the case may be. You guys that are my age know what those games are. And so again, like I said, it's a lot of fun factors in that video that look like the game is going to be a ton of fun. And it might be online, where you play people online. And they might treat it, where they keep updating it as well. Which would probably be a cool thing for Crazy Taxi. It would probably work well and make sense for Crazy Taxi itself, right? So that you don't get bored of just picking up people and dropping them off, because that was the essence of the whole original game and franchise, where you just basically played as a taxi driver so that you can see what it feels like to be work in the taxi driver business, picking up people and dropping them off in fares and stuff like that. And that was it. That was really the main idea, but it was fun. It worked. Especially when they had all the cool licenses in the background and in the worlds and the map of different franchises that really exist in our reality, like KFC, right? Or like Virgin Records, which unfortunately, due to licenses and rights, obviously, a lot of those licenses were taken out and stripped away when the game came to Xbox from the arcade version that was out on Dreamcast. So if you have the Dreamcast version, it still has all those original assets. But if you play the Xbox version, the PS3 version, via the emulator or arcade store, it doesn't have it. So it kind of loses that big charm of real franchises. But again, it all goes back to you know, licensing issues. When you don't own a license and you got to redo contracts when they expire, a bunch of things can pop up where you may agree or may disagree and may not work. And then it hurts ultimately the game and the gamers that really want it, appreciate it, and support it. So the game is awesome. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. I think it's going to be the most surprising game of all of them, of what structure and style and direction they want to go with it. But again, as you can see, there was a game for it, and it was on Xbox. So most of these are on Xbox, right? Or multi-plat. But it just shows you that Sega had those big IPs, like Toe Jam and Earl on the OG, which is fully 3D, fun game, and a lot of people didn't even try it or played it, right? Or Total Wars, which is a hack and slash based off, I think, the Spartan world that they have, the RTS, which is called Spartan something, but it's based off that world. And that came out in the OG, right? I think it came out PS3 also, or 2. I'm not sure. I don't remember. So again, my feelings and thoughts is I'm totally ecstatic and happy that they made the announcements and that they also showed they trademark a bunch of other stuff and IPs, because that just gives hope that they're going to work on all those IPs little by little, especially if they have success with the ones they're doing now. But I'm a little apprehensive because, again, I'm trying to figure out where they're getting that money. They need the right backing to make these games the best quality that they can, so that it was all for nothing, and so that people don't regret it, or they regret it after it's all said and done. They got to make these games now that they announced them, but they got to make sure that they have a level of quality that's going to keep people and players engaged and wanting to play, and remember that Sega of old being reborn back of, with the times of now, so that, people can gain that sense of respect for the Sega brand once again, even though they've done tremendous games that maybe 90% of people in the gaming space haven't played. Hence something like Toomba, the Badass Elephant, right? And then they started the generation with games like Alien Isolation, which is also a fantastic game, right? So it's not for them trying to lack of trying to do other things like Sonic Frontier, Sonic Forces. They have been trying to do many Sonic games, like the two Sonic 4 episode 1 and 2 that were in the arcade were also great games that people didn't appreciate. But then when they made Sonic Mania, which was basically an amalgamation of all the Sonic games, like 1, 2, 3, and 1, that played exactly like the Genesis version, had the Genesis graphics, everybody was screaming, "Oh my God, it's amazing." So, it's kind of like a double-edged sword and very hypocritical, because it doesn't make no sense to show so much appreciation for something that's really not doing much different, but yet when they actually take risk and do something that looks really good and is different, people cross their heads and don't buy or support it, and then cry that it doesn't do well, or then be upset when their next project they release doesn't have enough quality and polish. Like Sonic Boom had tremendous potential. It would have been one of the best Sonic games ever made in 3D. And yet, the developers couldn't get paid, and they stopped making the game literally 6 months before the game came out, or 8 months, because Sega was outsourcing it to another developer, even though they were publishing it. So then they had to finish it with their developers, but not really knowing what the whole idea was behind the game, whether it's gameplay mechanics, story, gameplay style. And so the project was just left there to die. And they released it in horrific conditions, even though deep down when you play it, there's a good game in there. which makes it even more upsetting because had the developer stayed and Sega been able to pay them, they would have done a phenomenal job, and it probably would have been one of the best Sonic games in 3D to rival things like, like Mario Odyssey or the Mario 3D World games that are very polished and are very good and comprehensive. That's why it makes it even more sad and more of a sour grape type of feel because, they didn't catch a slack or break financially. But now they're doing these games. And I hope it don't fall in that same category that they're getting funded but not enough, and then they start a project and they either gotta finish, let it go and not finish it and produce it, or cut corners and half-ass it, and then it'll be something that starts off strong or have a lot of solid elements, but yet as the game progresses, it kind of gets lame or it doesn't have enough elements to warrant the the backing of the gamers or the support of the gamers, because the game is just not up to snuff. So again, that's my main concern, that they have enough support financially to actually be able to, release these games, whether AA, single A, triple A, but with the best quality in gameplay, so that they get embraced, they get put on the map, that they can get well-received reviews from YouTubers, the gamers themselves, the community, and even the fake media sites that love, skewing and always giving their 2 cents that makes no sense half the time about the game, about the games having quality or being quality, right? So again, I'm excited, but I'm apprehensive because I got to see how it plays out. But I'm also curious if very close we'll get an announcement that Sega and then Microsoft either made a partnership or that they're going to sell, games and be making deals where maybe possibly they're even exclusive to the Xbox console, and that Microsoft is funding them, or that Microsoft just flat out acquired them, which would probably be the best thing for them and a whole lot of other companies, because Microsoft got that real money to protect, expand, and give financial freedom and security to the developers making the games, which will bring out better creativity and better quality, because the developers are happy with where they are and don't feel afraid that they might not have a job the next day because they're working under the umbrella of Sega, but not being funded properly because they don't have the money. That's it, bottom line. That's my main concern, my biggest concern, and what I really want from this whole ordeal. That Microsoft either acquires them or that they did a multi-million dollar deal with, multiple games, let's say, going forward, and they partnered up so that they can get funded properly if Sega didn't want to go the route of being acquired, for example. So yeah, guys, that's been my thoughts on the whole Sega This Is a New Era announcement. I hope I touch as much topics as possible. Maybe I'll do an episode where I'll show you every single Sega game that has come out on other consoles since the Dreamcast, stopped being produced, just so that you guys can see at least the ones that I have in hand, which is most, unless it's something that came out of Europe or Japan or was obscure to those platforms and and obviously those countries where at the time either they weren't region free or we didn't have accessibility because they were from another state or another country that we had no access or availability to access them, you know? So, you know, that's a totally different story. I know that Panzer Dragoons 2, the remaster, is supposed to come out this year. I'm hoping we'll see something soon. And I hope they make a physical for Xbox of the first one also, because they never did one for the first one, Panzer Dragoon 1, but they did make one for Sony's PlayStation consoles and for the Switch. So, you know, bummer, but that's how it is. So, guys, this is your host, Ebot, signing off. This was just my thoughts on Sega and their new era and how I think it's going to play out. I hope you enjoyed the video. Leave a thumbs up if you did. Leave a thumbs down if you didn't. Share this video with anyone you think might also enjoy it. As usual, for all of you that continue to give me support, thank you. Thank you, because without you, my channel would not be sustained. I wouldn't be here today. But if you're new to the channel, like what I do, like what I'm doing, and you want to join the family, and you actually were kind enough to subscribe, thank you also from the bottom of my heart, because I'm extremely humble, because I know you didn't have to. But since you did, just remember, I consider you now part of my family. And, of course, certainly, but certainly, last but not least, you can find me on any social media platform, from Twitter and TikTok and even Twitch. You can go there in the description below and get the information. Also, if you guys ever want to DM me directly behind DMs to have a conversation, ask me any questions, to ask for, let's say, a request on something you want me to do, or even donate something to the channel because you like what I do, I will be more than glad to do it. I will be more than humble and grateful to accept it if it's a donation, because I know you don't have to. And if you do, it just shows me how much you appreciate what I'm doing in my channel. So that's without question. So, yeah, and if you want to help my channel directly, to help me fund more stuff, to do it, to show it to you guys, I will also be completely humble and grateful, because I know you don't have to. But if, you know, you do, there is a way you can with my Patreon and PayPal. Information also down in the description below. Guys, I'm extremely tired. Please forgive me for the maybe grogginess or slurring. It's not my intent. This is the only time I had the opportunity to do this video, and I've been wanting to do it for a long time, since the awards. I'm sorry I'm late, but better late than never. And I hope you enjoy my thoughts and what I think and what I showed you here on this video going forward. I love you guys. I'll see you next one, and hopefully you'll come back and join me for the ride on another episode. So, peace, guys. Have a blessed one, and keep it Xbox, keep it gaming. Remember, don't get triggered, don't get upset. It's all in good fun. Xbox for life, like a sickness that can't be cured. That's my saying. That's my slogan. Don't get triggered, people. It's all in good fun. Peace.